literally out of your whole comfort zone.
All right, that was LeBron James on the Road Trippin' podcast. You can hear him clearly state there that two of his championships, one in 2016 in Cleveland and the one this past season in the bubble, were the two hardest in NBA league history. Stephen A., what's your beef with LeBron's comments?
Well, first of all, I want to say that originally I was mistaken because I thought that initially he said that it was the two hardest championships in his career. So I apologize for that, Max and Charlie. I was under the impression he was talking about two of his 4 championships. For some reason, I went deaf. I didn't hear him say the two hardest championships in NBA history. With all due respect to the great LeBron James, I think that's one of the most ignorant statements that have ever come out of his mouth. Let's take into account the San Antonio Spurs in 2014 when they went up against Dallas, when they had to go up against OKC with KD and Russell Westbrook, and then they had to go up against Miami for crying out loud. And then not only that, they had Dame and those boys in the second round. Let's look at the 2011 Dallas Mavericks that were underdogs in every series. Let's look at the Houston Rockets in 1995 and how they were underdogs and they were a 6th seed and they ultimately advanced to the finals and swept Shaq and Penny and those boys. Let's take those things into consideration. But more importantly than anything else, the reason why I use such a strong word like ignorant, especially, and I would usually never associate such a thing with the brilliance of a LeBron James. Sir, what about Bill Russell? You know, one of my boys pointed that out to me yesterday. I didn't see the text until this morning. But Bill Russell won championships in an era when Medgar Evers and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X were assassinated. Bill Russell was a player coach and won back-to-back titles. Bill Russell was a black man playing in Boston and had to endure all the things that he endured in order to win. How can you sit up there and know anything about your history, which I know LeBron knows because he's a savant, and just forget that part? I don't see how you can do that. When you talk about your championships and how difficult. Now, if you were just talking about on the court, I guess you could say it's debatable, even though I would say I would beg to differ. But when you talk about just the toughest championships because you want to bring COVID-19 into the equation, Max, or something like that, I just don't know how you can ignore the trials and tribulations that Bill Russell had to endure en route to capturing a championship. That's why he's considered the ultimate champion. It's not just because of the 11 he has. It's because of the duress and the circumstances under which he captured them. And they far exceeded the challenges that LeBron James just went through with COVID-19.
Well, I mean, look, LeBron is he's changing definitions midstream. Number one, okay. I can understand if he says the championship against the Warriors was the toughest. It's a 73-win team. That's the all-time record. They were down 3-1, and obviously they have to play the last game on the road. And it was a tight game, and they held the Warriors, the greatest half-court offense ever to that point in history, to 0 points over the last 4 minutes and change of that game. Stephen A., you and I saw each other at that finals game. We were there and witnessed history that night. So I understand him saying that. And I understand him saying that being in the bubble he felt, or others, players he may have talked to felt, was the most stressful or something like that. But it can't be the hardest in the bubble if you win 3-1, 3-1, 4-1, 4-1, 4-2. You know, they never got extended 7. They only got extended 6 against the Heat. And I'm sure it was taxing emotionally. But that goes for every single person in the bubble. And if everyone's taxed the same way, then no one has a disadvantage. In that way, it's not the hardest. It can't be. It may feel really tough. I get that. But he's really talking about two different things. As far as you're talking about Bill Russell's performances as a player coach in trying times is concerned, I agree with that. Also, you might point to the Knicks in 1969, 1970, who, without Willis Reed, remember, he limps onto the court, he hits a jump shot, but Walt Frazier had to go crazy in that series in order for the Knicks to win in 7 games against the Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor team. Right? Like, you could point to, there are series throughout history that compare to how difficult it was for LeBron in Golden State. And while no one had ever played in a bubble before this past season, the Lakers weren't the only team to do it. In fact, every other team in the bubble had to experience that. So that's my beef with LeBron. He's playing a little fast and loose with definitions, kind of implicitly.
Yeah. Well, we definitely haven't put ourselves, we're not in his shoes. We don't really know what it's like. A lot of players, though, say being in the bubble relieved a lot of the stresses on their body. They could recover quicker. There was no travel, etc. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there because we have another topic to get to, and opinions are really flying all over the place about this one. Should Dak stay in Dallas? Because if he does want out, the question is, where should he go? You do not want to.
The 2016 Cavs coming back from 3-1 versus 73-9 team, being down 3-1 versus one of the best teams that ever been assembled.
Two-time MVP.
Two-time MVP. And then what we went through in the bubble. And if you were not in a bubble, you don't quite understand it. You will never, ever understand how hard it was to win that championship, to be able to motivate yourself, to be this is literally out of your whole comfort zone.
No family, no friend.
family. I didn't see my family for 8.5 weeks. And then it was just my wife. I didn't see my kids until I got out of the bubble, 96 days. Everything you're accustomed to, your own bed or your chef, your sleeping pattern, you're so accustomed to, for me, I'm a routine guy. And when my routine is like knocked off, it's like, I don't know, it's hard for me to center myself. So
I'm with you.
I'm literally in the bubble at times, like in my room, literally seeing the walls like this, like The Shining.
Just blood.
Just like blood coming down my walls. I go in the hallway. It's like 2 kids on a tricycle. I'm like, oh, holy shit, what is going on? I got to go home. I'm ready to leave.
You haven't seen The Shining. We want you to play with us.
Yes.
You got to see The Shining.
It's one of the greatest ever horror movies. I'm a horror movie connoisseur, guys. I'm sorry for the people that don't watch horror movies, but it felt like a horror movie.
Yeah.
In the bubble. And I just believe that I've been a part of 2 of the hardest championships in league history. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what anyone says about that. You can debate who's the greatest of all time individually, things of that nature, and what they've done. But as far as the teams, that's one of the 2 hardest championships in league history. I've been a part of that.
All right, so let's talk about him. From coming back down 3-1 on the 73-9 Warriors in 2016, thinking about all that the Lakers faced in terms of adversity last season, do you agree those are the 2 hardest titles won?
Absolutely. I mean, I dare someone to come up with 2 other ones. Look, I covered that Golden State-Cleveland series for the LA Times. Allie, I got tired just kind of going back and forth on the plane from Oakland to Cleveland for all the games in that series. I mean, it was tense. It was dramatic. And indeed, they were the first team ever to overturn a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals. That's that one. And, of course, the NBA season that we just witnessed ending a couple months ago, the longest ever in league history, maybe the longest of any season of all time anywhere. So, yeah, LeBron is absolutely spot on when he says that.
BK, as I pitched that question to Brez, I saw you shake your head yes as well.
I don't know. Look, I'm not a historian. I can't go back and break down the path for every. Beating that Warriors team was a remarkable achievement. It's hard to find, particularly given what LeBron had to do on an individual level, the performance that was required to do it. Was this title that they just won in 2020, was that harder? Was their path harder? Did they have to play the hardest teams? I don't know, but it was unique relative to everything else that the NBA has ever done. There has never been a situation like that where the mental fatigue that goes into playing in that bubble, as LeBron pointed out, being away from your family for, 95, 96 days, whatever that, didn't see his kids. You're out of your routines. The isolation there, from a mental standpoint, it's hard to think of something that was more challenging than that, even if you think the Lakers didn't have the hardest path to get there based on their opponents.
So, BK, LeBron compares being in that bubble to that of The Shining. I still haven't seen the movie. Are we surprised? No one's surprised. That was 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't watched it. So will you help me understand what he's talking about? Was the bubble really that bad?
I believe the hotel they were staying at had a problem where every time you got off at the wrong floor, blood would come out of the elevator.
That's a
lie. That's probably what it was.
Red rum. Red rum. What's red rum backwards, Allie? Do you know?
No.
Well,
murder. There you go.
There we go.
They also, the Morris, they had those creepy twins in The Shining. The Morris brothers were there. I don't know. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Do you think that the other Lakers felt the way that Bron felt as well?
Yeah.
That it was like The Shining?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
The walls closing in
blood.
and pools of blood everywhere. And
little tricycles.
I mean, Jack Nicholson is one of the biggest Laker fans of all time, so maybe he was trying to get into the bubble a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. When you talk to people who were in the bubble, whether it's reporters or coaches or players, it was unlike anything they ever experienced And there was no doubt that this season was going to start without a bubble. Now, where are we, 8 months from now, 7 months from now? Are we in a bubble situation for the